Today we are making some vegan carne asada, one of my favorite things to eat before going vegan, especially when grilling season hits. So we're going to make some, but we're going to be using our good buddy Seitan instead of cow meat. And the base of this steak recipe is courtesy of Sam over at It Doesn't Taste Like Chicken. I'll link to her recipe in the description. Now, this style of asada we're making originated from northern Mexico, and it's ubiquitous here in Los Angeles, and next to burgers is probably the thing I ate the most late at night. It's normally made with a thin piece of skirt steak, which has been marinated in the most delicious liquid known to the world, and luckily that marinade is accidentally vegan. So, to get started, let's make our seitan, get a food processor, and then we're going to add in 1.5 cups of vital wheat gluten, and I prefer to spoon it in like this. And then after that, we're going to do 1 cup of cooked lentils. I'm using this stuff from Trader Joe's. And it's also worth noting that I made a version of this where I swapped the lentils for some Impossible meat, and that turned out just as dandy as well. And then next, since we follow vegan law around here, we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of nooch, aka nutritional yeast. And then we're going to do 2 teaspoons each of garlic powder, smoked paprika, and chili powder. And then we're going to do 1 teaspoon of liquid smoke, some black pepper, and then we're just going to go ahead and blend that up. And then for our wet mixture, and I have no idea why I didn't put the liquid smoke in this, but we're going to start off with 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of beefless bouillon or veggie bouillon, and then 6 tablespoons of our pal water. And then we're just going to whisk that up. And I added in way too much red food dye off camera, as you'll soon see, but that is optional. So let's add that wet mixture to the food processor. We're just going to blend that up, and you may need to stop and scrape down the edges. But another important note is to make sure you don't overmix this, as it can make the seitan too chewy. Just blend it until it starts to come together. I made this mistake on a couple of tests, so learn from my mistakes. It should still be a bit crumbly, but that is okay. So then we just want to dump it out onto a work surface, and again, we just need to knead this until it holds its shape. Make sure you don't over knead or it'll be chewy as well. And then we're just going to roll it out as thin as we want to. Carne asada is typically very thin, like 1/4 inch or less. But since we need to steam this later, I'm going to make sure I don't roll it too big because I want it to, fit inside of my pot. I could have cut it in half and then just made 2 thinner steaks and stacked them in the steamer. So, give that a try if you want it, but this is what I went with. And then after we have it rolled out, we're going to let it rest for about 10 or 15 minutes, and we're going to get about 2 cups of water in a large pot or Dutch oven heating up. And then we're going to wrap your steak tightly in foil. If you don't like foil touching your food, you can wrap it in parchment paper first. And then once the water is boiling, add a steamer basket and then your steak, and we're just going to cover that, lower the heat, and steam it for about 25 minutes, flipping halfway through. Then once it's done steaming, let it rest until it's room temperature, and then now we need to make our marinade. So we're going to start off with 2 tablespoons of diced chipotle in adobo, 6 tablespoons of orange juice, the juice of 5 limes, which is about another 6 tablespoons of that as well, 4 to 6 cloves of garlic, 1 teaspoon each of cumin, ground coriander, cayenne. Obviously, leave that out if you don't like it spicy, but honestly, it's not that spicy to me. I'm also using 1 teaspoon of this guajillo powder, but if you can't find it, don't sweat it. We're also going to do 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of oil. I'm using avocado oil, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and then optionally, but highly recommended, is half a cup of Mexican beer, and then a big old handful of fresh cilantro. And we're going to blitz that up, and obviously you don't have to use a food processor, but I already had mine out, so I figured why not. But you can also just mince up your garlic and finely chop your cilantro if you're not lazy like I am. Now let's unwrap our seitan steak, and that's what it looks like. I'll get a freezer bag and we'll throw it in there. You could totally use some Tupperware or whatever you like as well. And then we're going to pour in that marinade, and I recommend letting this marinate for at least an hour, but I'm going to do mine overnight because I think seitan gets a slightly better texture if you let it rest overnight. Maybe not slightly. Some people think it's much, much better. Anyways, now that it's the next day, let's get ready to grill. So I'm going to get our asada, this grill press, some paper towels, some tongs, a spatula, a little bit of oil, and then a plate, and let's get out to our grilling area. Oh, I also forgot we need a basting brush as well. And once your grill is heated up, and yes, I'm using a gas grill, you can use charcoal if you want to, but either way, we're going to grease up our grates with a paper towel that's been dipped in that oil, and then we're going to add our vegan asada steak and put the grill press down on it, and all that's going to do is help it come in contact with the grill for some hopefully bitter charred sort of bits. And honestly, after this, it's pretty easy. You just cook it on each side as many times as you'd like, and I like to baste it with the marinade every time I flip it. And normally asada cooks in just a few minutes since it's so thin, but this does take a bit longer. I would say I probably cooked it on both sides twice for about 3 minutes per side, so like 12 minutes total cooking time, but you do it however you like. And then once it's done, we're going to take it back inside, and I slice it up like this and put it on a plate with all these little things, you know, mostly for the thumbnail, but in all honesty, you just want to chop it up into little bite-sized pieces, or, you know, however finely you want to chop it up, it works just as great as well. And another thing about this being vegan is we don't got to waste any of that leftover marinade for fear of cross-contamination and dying. We can add the meat back to the bag and infuse even more flavor. In fact, this is how I recommend you store it for later if that's your plan. Otherwise, get a tortilla and heat it up, lay down as much of that carne asada as you'd like, a squeeze of lime, onions, cilantro, your favorite salsa, and now it's time to dig in. And yeah, I gotta say, this might not fool anybody into thinking it's animal-based asada, but it's still freaking delicious as it is. It's just a flavor powerhouse in your mouth. And if you want to make a soy curl-based carne asada, check out my video for that right here. And until then, I'll see you all next time.